Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Tomb Mold called Planetary Clairvoyance. So I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm not the biggest death metal fan at all. Doesn't mean I can't recognize it or won't listen to it if it's playing, but as a subgenre of metal, it's never quite been my thing. And I've asked myself why a couple of times now. If I'm not into the technical stuff, that's one thing, but melodic death metal is something that exists, and I've heard a decent bit of it. Surely there's a middle ground or an inroad for me to start hearing and liking and exploring more of the genre. Well, believe it or not, there is one modern death metal band I enjoy a considerable bit. All the more ironic because they aren't really perceived as one of the softer acts in the subgenre, with more comparisons trending towards a more rough-edge classic death metal sound from like the late 80s with a slightly filthier production. And that band is Tomb Mold. And I'm genuinely not sure what it is. I'm sure part of it's tied to them being Canadian, actually from Toronto, and thus me having seen them live about 3 or 4 times, and they're phenomenal live. But they also managed to hit that sweet spot where they got a genuine tunefulness in their composition, some decent enough lyric writing, and yet a chugging thickness across the board that doesn't sound blown out or chasing cheaply produced abrasion trying to be edgelords. There are levels of organic depth and pummeling presence to their sound that actually wound up being entirely up my alley. And sure, Manor of Infinite Forms did clean things up a little bit more to draw more attention to the excellent lead guitar work, and you can always make the argument the group is a little bit one-dimensional and meat and potatoes for this brand of death metal, because apparently they kinda are. But again, I'm not a death metal fan, and yet there is something here that really clicks for me. So I genuinely wanted to give their newest album, Planetary Clairvoyance, a spin, especially as some were calling this their best to date, so alright, what do we get? Well, here's the thing. I really like this album. In fact, I would argue it's damn close to greatness in delivering what Tomb Mold's now established formula is, with even more tenacity and ferocity, and the sort of experimentation that shows a band comfortable in their lane, but also willing and able to expand their sound. But there are 2 main problems that I know about this review right out of the gate. If you want to leave now, I totally get it. Because for one, I'm not a death metal fan and just don't have that larger pool of references to draw upon and compare. And more to the point, it's hard to avoid the feeling that one might have expanded their potential in one area while slightly contracting in another. So I question whether or not this album could be more of a lateral move for me. Or indeed, if that's what the more conventional Tomb Mold fan would want anyway, so what the hell do I know? I'm not in that group. But let me start by saying that if you know the Tomb Mold sound, you will grasp and probably like this album very quickly. A titanic, chugging low end that's got a ton of genuine crunch and groove, the cavernous kick drums that can almost feel Doom-like at moments, the moments of insane shredding, the guitar solos are great here, and a remarkably organic, almost bestial presence anchored by Max Klebanov's guttural delivery. Now, all this has the mixing and mastering focus that hits the precise line between thunderous smolder and a surprising amount of melodic intricacy amidst all the down-tuned crunch, where the guitar solos sound like they're being clawing out of the deep before getting subsumed yet again, and it's that organic tunefulness matching the furiosity that absolutely appeals to me. It still works. And yet some of that melody feels all the more hard-pressed and buried this time around beneath the whole caveman riffs and the incomprehensible roars. And on songs like Infinite Resurrection and Cerulean Salvation, the songs absolutely feel more chaotic and pummeling. A little bit more technical to be sure, but it's thornier and tighter, which to a hardcore death metal fan I can see being all the more awesome. But for someone who's not, like me, amidst the cavalcade of riffs, you might lose some of that uniqueness, where the hooks are definitely still there, but the brighter moments of melody and the guitar lines get a little suffocated. And yet to their credit, the songs don't seem to meander or lose their focus. This is a tight album, and that's all the more because some of the stylistic diversions that show up across this album that are absolutely new to a band that I previously described as kind of one-dimensional. I might not entirely like the abrupt shifts to acoustics that splits apart Beg to Life, even at that roiling return to the riffs after it is really kick-ass. But the first sign that something's really shifted comes on the 3rd track, Phosphorene Ultimate. It's the shortest song here, feels otherwise a little like an interlude, but amidst the clipped vocal textures and the borderline ambient tones of the song, it's not really a death metal piece. But what's so striking is that it doesn't feel like your standard synth-heavy space rock diversion. It's just as primal and creepy and spare and unnerving in its own way. And once you pick up on that, you start hearing some other odd production choices to emphasize that cosmic horror here. Echoing vocal snippets buried across the title track, all the more moments of heat death while it collapses into feedback and clip distortion to end out the album, feeling all the more spare. And you get those other moments that are fleeting but capture just enough of that barren isolation to really creep you out. I've also heard some comparisons being made to Cynic's first album, Focus, and while I can definitely hear some of that, and that's a high compliment, I tend to consider Cynic a little more precise and jazzy and technical than the thicker, stormier grooves we get here. This album can be just as technical, but it's more knotted together, and it's not as showy about it either. And this is where I actually have to give Tomb Mold a little bit more credit. Because while these choices, they absolutely reflect their style of writing, it goes in an interesting direction. The band has described the album as a complete annihilation of everything, starting from the first songs in gory territory where the cancerous primal horrors between the stars will multiply and consume, where death and time are mere markers to be counted as it's all reborn again and again. An alien monstrosity somewhere between Phyrexia and the Chaos Gods of Warhammer 40k. But while you know this is going to end up in flames and dying between the stars, what's intriguing about this album is that there's a weird sense of humanity here. All this might seem aberrant and alien, but Infinite Resurrection mentions in its final lines that there was at one point humanity, dragged through endless ghastly rebirths and never be able to find peace or sleep. And while some of you might immediately think, okay, we're going to go through the extended suicidal metaphors, we've seen this arc before, that's also not really the vibe here either. Because while this album isn't melancholic or depressing so much as it is acceptance of that final furious end. To quote Accelerative Phenomenae, it's not a sobbing death, but a final lament in the face of whatever titanic, ineffable force will finally snuff out this existence, this torture. So yeah, it's bleak, but by the time you get to the end of the album, it's more the destruction of a cancer, a cycle of overgrown disease finally purged so that natural order is restored for whatever is next to come. And if all of this seems kind of overblown and ridiculous, come on, it's death metal. You kind of expect that. But there is a tightness, there's an emotive core, and a real command of atmosphere that, for me, kind of lets me take it seriously. I got pulled into this. But as a whole, you know what, for as much as I love the atmosphere, the cohesion, the sense that Tomb Mold is growing and evolving as a band and getting some real dimensionality when, in all due honesty, for some of their audiences they wouldn't need to, I do wish some of the brighter tunes came through more strongly. And while I've been listening to this album steadily for the past week, I do worry if burying some of those in the murk of chugging riffs will make this feel a little less memorable long term, which even on a project that had more melody like Manor of Infinite Forms did become an issue for me. But on the flip side, I am inclined to err on the side of positive simply because there is a lot more going on here outside of that central formula, which is still rock solid. And even components that some might consider vestigial, like the lyrics, they've improved significantly. So you know, I'm giving this a very light 8 out of 10 and a real recommendation. Obviously, if you're a death metal fan, this needs to be on your radar yesterday. And well, if you're not, it's kind of a tough sell. Death metal is very much its own beast. As someone who isn't crazy about the genre, I think this is pretty great. So yeah, definitely check this out. Kicks ass. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe. I'd be more than grateful. I'll admit I'm a little bit surprised how much I liked this, but yeah, they may have wound up on the trailing edge last year, not this year. This stuff is good enough to be talked about in full review. You want to buy or stream it, links in the description below. I'm happy to hear from what you guys who are more diehard death metal fans say in the comments. And I got the poll up there. I'm curious where people fall on this, especially you diehard death metal fans. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And hey, if you guys are actually looking to hear more from me, I'm going to be at Con Bravo coming up in the next couple of days, this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you want to see me there, it's in Hamilton, Ontario. Come over, say hello, happy to talk for a little bit. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And hey, if you guys are actually managing to look for anything else here, if you want to see, let's say, the last episode of Billboard Breakdown, links in the card right over there. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.